On August 13, 2025, life in India, Kishorpur village seemed ordinary. Farmers were bent over their crops, children ran through the narrow lanes, and the air was filled with the hum of a normal day. But fate had chosen this day to unveil a nightmare. A farmer, going about his routine, walked to a nearby well to draw water. As he leaned over, a sharp, revolting stench hit his senses. At first, he brushed it off as stagnant water, but when he looked closer, his blood ran cold. Two large sacks floated eerily on the dark surface of the well. Confused and disturbed, he called for help. Within moments, a handful of villagers gathered. Together, they hauled the sacks out of the water, heavy and dripping. Curiosity quickly gave way to dread, and when the knots were finally untied, horror spilled into the open. Inside were human remains, parts of a woman's body, dismembered and stuffed away like refuse. But what froze every breath in the crowd was this: the body had no head and no feet. The discovery sent a chill through everyone. The farmer's trembling hands dialed 999, and soon, the police arrived. Officers rushed to the scene, but even hardened investigators were shaken. They scoured the well, hoping to recover the missing head and feet, but only found another severed hand. Without a face, without identity, the body was a puzzle that spoke only of brutal violence and deliberate concealment. Whoever committed this crime had wanted the victim erased, not just killed. The police knew this wasn't a crime they could allow to vanish into shadows. 8 to 10 special teams were immediately deployed. Villagers were called in to identify the woman, but no one recognized her. Hope flickered in small clues, fragments of clothing, pieces of jewelry. Using these, police released digital posters across social media. More than 100 villages were combed, questions asked, doors knocked. Over 200 CCTV cameras were reviewed, and 1,000 posters were plastered across the district. Yet, 5 long days passed, and nothing surfaced. It was as if the woman had lived a life erased, her silence echoing louder than the chaos her death had caused. But as they say, patience can turn even silence into revelation. For the police, that moment was still waiting, just beyond the horizon. Days after the gruesome discovery, when the investigation seemed to be drifting into darkness, hope appeared in the form of a man who walked into the Jhansi police station. In his trembling hands, he held a missing persons poster. The woman's face on it bore a haunting resemblance to the body police had found. With a heavy voice, he revealed the truth. It was his sister Rachna Yadav, who had been missing for days. The moment he identified the poster, a flicker of relief ran through the police ranks. Finally, the faceless body had a name. When the brother was shown the remains, his grief confirmed their worst fears. This was indeed Rachna. From that moment, the investigation shifted focus. Who was Rachna, and why had her life ended in such a brutal way? Rachna Yadav, aged between 33 and 35, had a past full of storms. She had once been married in Tikamgarh, but her beauty and carefree nature became a curse. Her husband grew consumed with suspicion, poisoned by jealousy. Even after giving birth to 2 children, the cracks in their marriage only widened. After 5 long years of misery, Rachna walked away. She left her husband, took her children, and returned to her parental home, divorcing the man who could never trust her. But fate had another twist waiting. In Jhansi's Todifatafa village, she met Shivraj Yadav, a young man from Mahoba. The moment he laid eyes on her, he was smitten. Their connection was instant, a fire that burned brighter with every passing day. Soon their affection blossomed into love so intense that separation became unbearable. Despite knowing about her failed marriage, Shivraj embraced her fully. Within months, they were married, building a new life together. Yet, love stories often hide cracks beneath their surface. By 2023, Rachna's world shook once more. She stormed into the police station and filed an FRA against her husband, Shivraj, and his elder brother. Her shocking claim: Shivraj's brother had tried to force himself on her, and worse, Shivraj had stood by his brother's side instead of protecting her. Whether her allegations were truth or strategy remained unclear, but the police registered the case. Word spread through the village like wildfire. It was then that a new player entered her life: Sanjay Patel, the former village head. Though retired, Sanjay's influence stretched far. When he approached Rachna to hear her story, she confided everything, believing he could help her fight for justice. Sanjay, charmed by her beauty, pledged his support, financial, emotional, and legal. He even began accompanying her to court in Garatha, promising her strength in a world that had turned hostile. But Sanjay's interest was not entirely noble. Beneath his facade of protector lay a man captivated by Rachna's allure. His help soon turned into affection, and his affection into obsession. Rachna, quick to sense his desires, used the opportunity to her advantage. What began as a cautious friendship spiraled into intimacy. Sanjay, despite being a middle-aged man and a father of two, entered into a clandestine affair with her. He arranged for Rachna to stay comfortably in Gurusarai, covering her expenses, while secretly visiting her. For nearly 2 years, their affair thrived in shadows, even after Sanjay's wife discovered the betrayal. Though his home became a battleground, Sanjay managed to pacify his family, never giving up his illicit relationship with Rachna. But on June 2nd, 2025, destiny struck again. Rachna's second husband, Shivraj, suddenly died. His death changed everything. For Rachna, the road seemed clear. She turned to Sanjay and demanded what she had long desired: marriage. The obstacle, her husband, was gone. Now, she wanted Sanjay to take her as his wife. For Rachna, life had already tested her enough. Twice betrayed by marriage, twice forced to rebuild. She no longer wanted to live as someone's secret. After Shivraj's sudden death in June 2025, she turned to Sanjay Patel with a demand that carried the weight of her future: marry me or let me go. The request silenced Sanjay. His face hardened, and after a long pause, he spoke softly but firmly. I love you deeply, Rachna, but marriage is impossible. I already have a family. If I marry you, my respect, my position, my entire reputation will be destroyed. Please, let's just continue as we are. But Rachna had reached her limit. She no longer wanted to hide, to live in shadows, to exist only as someone's shameful secret. When Sanjay refused, she pushed harder, unwilling to back down. And then came August 9th. That day, she suddenly disappeared. No contact with her family, no visits to Sanjay. She was gone. When she finally surfaced, it was as a corpse, dismembered, dumped in sacks, and thrown into a village well. The question that haunted everyone was simple yet chilling. Who had done this to Rachna? When police asked her grieving brother if he suspected anyone, he spoke a name without hesitations: Sanjay Patel. He knew about the growing tension between his sister and Sanjay, about the mounting pressure to marry, and the bitterness it had caused. Investigators turned their eyes toward Sanjay. Location data confirmed their suspicions. On the night of August 9th, he had been near the well, miles away from his home. Why would a man travel to such a remote place in the dead of night, unless it was to conceal something he didn't want the world to see? The police wasted no time. They descended on Sanjay's house, where he was found with his family and his nephew Sandeep Patel. Both men were taken into custody. At first, Sanjay tried to play innocent, dodging questions, twisting words, pretending ignorance. But as the interrogation grew harsher, his resistance broke. With his voice heavy, he confessed, "Yes, I killed her. I couldn't take the pressure anymore. I didn't act alone. My nephew Sandeep and his friend, Pradeep Ahirwar, helped me." The revelation stunned the officers. Sanjay and Sandeep were arrested immediately, but Pradeep had already fled. The manhunt began. A reward of $2,000 was placed on his head, and multiple police teams fanned out in pursuit. Days later, they tracked him down. When cornered, Pradeep tried to escape, sprinting into the darkness. Shots rang out. A bullet tore through his right leg, bringing him crashing to the ground. Within seconds, he too was in custody. Now, all three suspects were behind bars. But another question remained, one darker and more unsettling. Why? Why had Sandeep and Pradeep joined hands with Sanjay to kill Rachna? Who exactly was Pradeep in this story? And what was the true chain of events that had led to Rachna's violent end? As the police pressed harder, the three men began to talk. Piece by piece, the grim truth spilled out. It began on August 6th. Rachna had fallen ill, suffering from heavy bleeding. Concerned, Sanjay admitted her to a hospital. 2 days later, her condition improved, and doctors discharged her. But instead of going home, Rachna looked Sanjay in the eye and said, "We're not going home. We're going to court. We will marry today." For Sanjay, the words were a nightmare. He tried to reason with her, begged her to reconsider, but Rachna was resolute. Finally, in frustration, he left her at the hospital. But his mind was racing. He knew she would never let go of her demand, and if she forced the issue, his life, his reputation, his family would collapse. That night, Sanjay made a decision that would change everything. He turned to his nephew, Sandeep Patel, and laid bare his problem. He told him about Rachna's pressure, about her threats to expose him if he refused to marry her. He spoke not as a man seeking advice, but as a man already leaning toward a deadly solution. For nearly 2 years, Sanjay Patel had poured money and promises into his affair with Rachna Yadav. By his own admission, he had spent over 20 lakh on her comforts. But when Rachna insisted on marriage, his obsession turned to resentment. He knew she would not back down. That is when his nephew, Sandeep Patel, offered a solution so sinister it sealed her fate. Sandeep had a past steeped in violence. He had once murdered a girl and served time behind bars. In prison, he met Pradeep Ahirwar, another man cut from the same cloth. Both were ruthless, both were reckless, and together they formed a dark alliance. When Sanjay confided his troubles, Sandeep immediately suggested eliminating Rachna. "We'll get Pradeep to help," he said coldly. The plan was set. On August 9, 2025, Sanjay and his accomplices went to the hospital, where Rachna was recovering. Once again, she refused to leave unless Sanjay took her straight to court to marry her. Tired of resisting, he put on a mask of affection, assuring her that he agreed. Relieved, Rachna finally followed him out. Sandeep and Pradeep sat in the front of the car, while Sanjay and Rachna sat in the back. As the journey began, Sanjay whispered tender promises, even suggesting a drive to freshen her mood. Believing him, Rachna let her guard down. They drove nearly 70 kilometers, reaching the quiet stretch near Lachara Dam. There, Sanjay stopped for alcohol. The three men drank heavily, laughing and wasting time, deliberately waiting for the daylight to fade. They needed the cover of darkness to carry out their brutal plan. By nightfall, Rachna grew restless. She demanded to be taken home. Instead, the car rolled closer to the dam. Then, without warning, Pradeep spoke cruelly. "Forget this man. He will never marry you. Leave him." Shocked, Rachna snapped back. "Who are you to interfere? This is between Sanjay and me. He will marry me." But when she turned to Sanjay for reassurance, his reply shattered her world. "Pradeep is right. I will never marry you." The words cut deeper than a knife. Rachna lashed out in fury, shouting, fighting, demanding answers. Sanjay's temper erupted. In a fit of rage, he lunged, his hands tightening around her throat. She struggled desperately, clawing, kicking, trying to break free. But Sandeep and Pradeep pinned her down, silencing her cries, restraining her flailing body. The night air filled with the sound of her last gasps, until finally, silence. Rachna Yadav, a woman who had fought all her life for freedom, was gone. But killing her was only half their plan. The men tied her lifeless body to a stone, preparing to dump it into the dam. Just as they were about to act, headlights pierced the darkness. A police patrol car approached. Panic set in. They shoved Rachna's body into the trunk and sped away. At Lachari Dam, they tried again, but a guard spotted them and questioned their presence. Fearing discovery, they fled once more, racing through the night until they reached Kajuri River. There too, guards stood watch. Desperation clawed at them. Finally, Sanjay made a chilling decision. "We'll take her to Kishorpur. There's a well. No one will find her there." Under the cover of darkness, the three men carried out their gruesome task. They dismembered Rachna's body into 7 parts, stuffing them into sacks. The sacks were hurled into the Kishorpur well, while her head and feet were placed in a separate bag and thrown into the Lachari River without a face. Sanjay believed she would never be identified, but crime has a way of leaving trails. Despite their planning, police pieced the puzzle together. Sanjay, Sandeep and Pradeep were all arrested. Their confessions sealed their fate. And yet, the question lingers. Was Rachna guilty of anything more than wanting dignity, love, and recognition? Did her desire to step out of the shadows truly justify such a cruel, inhuman end? Now the world watches, awaiting justice. What punishment should Sanjay Patel and his accomplices face? For a crime born from lust, lies, and betrayal, can any sentence ever balance the scales?